No Legos were harmed in the making of this video. Today we're going to use $200 worth of Legos to demonstrate trillions of dollars in economic activity, which normally you would only see on a chart. But this is real. You know, I listened to a lot of economists and professors talk about the economy. And there's a lot of numbers and categories of financial information, different, very specific things, but very rarely do any of these learned professionals simplify things in a way that's easy to understand. Now, even the best professors, the ones I have the easiest time understanding and who've taught me the most, will still go on and on, essentially, about things which don't really get to the bottom of what we need to know. So this is what I call a visual demonstration. These Lego blocks you're seeing assembled right now are going to represent economic data in the trillions of dollars. Each of those colored layers is going to represent $1 trillion. And it will be much easier to visualize rather than just to hear the numbers from the experts. Here we are with our Lego stacks. Each stack is 10 layers tall, and the alternating colors represent each $1 trillion. So 1 trillion here, another trillion here, another trillion here, and so on. This is a stack of 10. Now this one is for GDP. The green and the blue. So we're going to put it right here, and we are going to look at 2024's GDP, which is $29.7 trillion. So there we go. That's 29.7 trillion. Now, let's look at all combined debt for the same year, 2024. And that is going to be 76. Let's see, there's 10, there's 20, 30, 40, 50, out of range, can't see the top, there's 60, there's 70, we need 76, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 890 billion, which is represented by this blue block, which will go on top here. All right, so I'm going to give you a quick look. Whoa, that is one tall tower. All right, now that is all the debt for 2024. Now let's move on to financial assets for 2024. For that, we are going to need $130 trillion. So we start out with blocks of 10. So there's 10, there's 20, 30, 40, 50. Okay, let's do another 10 and 20 and 30, 40 and 50, and then another 30. So there's 10, 20 and 30, and then we have $383 billion to put on top of that, which is represented by this blue cap. Okay, let's stack these. Whoop. Put this one on top of here, and this one on top of here, and boy, that's getting to be very, very tall. And let me back up a little bit here. Backing up, still can't see the top. Whoa, look at that. Financial assets are way up there. Okay, so this is 2024. You see GDP in its entirety. You see all combined debt in its entirety. And you see financial assets in its entirety, going almost all the way up to the ceiling of my little shop here. All right, now, here's the next thing for us to look at. Okay. Here is how much GDP grew in 2025. $1.7 trillion. All right, so we're going to see if we can snap this into place here. Yeah, it's not going to be easy because there is no... All right, these are 3D printed caps for the top of things. They're not exactly meant to have Legos in a standalone position attaching to them. All right, but anyway, let's see here. When we add these two blue caps together, there we go. There's $1.7 trillion that GDP grew in 2025. Okay, now the debt grew by $3 trillion $780 billion. So that's how much the debt grew by in 2025. Now, financial assets, let's see here, we're going to need more Legos. Financial assets grew by $13 trillion and $482 billion. There we go. All right, now, I see a bit of a math problem here. All right, we've got GDP that grew by 1.7 trillion, but the debt grew by $3.7 trillion. So if we were to take 1.7 trillion off of the debt here, all right, that's going to cancel out GDP. So that still leaves $2 trillion more in debt than the economy grew. Okay, so the economy borrowed $3.7 trillion more than, well, it borrowed $2 trillion more than its growth. So if you were to add back in the growth of GDP, you would end up with $3.7 trillion in new debt. All right, now here's the part that I can't figure. Okay? And when I say I can't figure it, I don't have an honest answer for this. Here is the growth in financial assets. Let me put that right up against our entire GDP there. I mean, what we're looking at, if I put my thumb right here and then put this on top of it, we're looking at the growth in financial assets being more than 50% of our GDP. Okay, let that sink in for a minute. More than half of our GDP. That's the amount that this already phenomenal tower of financial assets has grown. And let's see here. Let's take this and transport it up to the top. And, sorry, I can't reach that high. But I guarantee you this would hit the ceiling. Okay. Enough with the silliness. The amount of new debt, this $3.7 trillion, that is also part of this $13 trillion in additional financial assets, because that's what a debt is. A debt is money that needs to be paid back by somebody, but whoever it's paid back to is the owner of a financial asset. Those are one and the same. But this doesn't account for even half, not even a third of the financial asset gains for the year. So the question is, where does all this money come from? This $13.48 trillion. Well, in part, it gets siphoned out of the real economy. All right, some of this gets siphoned out of here. Not all of it, but enough for us to all feel a very uncomfortable upward shift in our cost of living. Financial assets are responsible for that. All right, now, this was fun with Legos. Legos are fun. They're a great thing to play with. They're also something that's very good for this demonstration. But all fun aside, this is a problem. That debt is so much larger than our GDP. We can't possibly pay back all that debt. And in all the history, going back from the present to the past, over 75 years, to 1952, and even further back than that, we have never paid down the debt. It's only grown. And that's a feature. It's not a bug. It's a feature of the way our economy is run, because all of that debt is all part of financial assets. So I moved those right next to each other. But look at everything that's towering above the top of the debt tower. All of that represents other types of financial instruments that earn, I'm using air quotes for that word, earn the bearers or the owners of that some type of dividend or some type of interest payment or something that makes them money. That's what financial assets do. And they make money at a much larger rate than the growth of the economy, or at a much larger rate than the economy can even afford, which is why we're all being squeezed. All right. I'm going to cut it off there. I am incredulous. I have been since I've discovered this. And I hope that you are too. We need to have some discussions about this. I have some answers as to how this all happens, okay? But I also have questions about how it all happens. I have some observations, but this is what we're dealing with, people. This is our reality, and it's a man-made construct. It's not natural, it's not organic, and if it can be made, it can be unmade or reshaped. But this is what we're dealing with. The engineering accomplishment of our lifetime is not bridges or fast trains or schools or hospitals. It is that. And I'll leave you with that thought.